Tonight, the president on the world stage.
You have countries that aren't paying their way.
Urging NATO members to share the burden in a 70-year-old military alliance.
You know what a fix is a fix.
And with the world watching, the president says the fix is in, ahead of tomorrow's next round of public impeachment hearings.
Plus,
it's that inner voice that urges us to choose the good and reject evil.
The battleground over religious liberty hitting the High Court.
And
we've got a copy of the EV hatch is opened and stowed.
The spacewalk that could help shed new light on dark matter. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Okay, starting motion.
Tense moments overseas and here at home. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. Well, President Trump is wielding his influence at NATO in London. And today, at least one world leader shot back.
The testy exchange came between Mr. Trump and French President Emmanuel Macron over ISIS fighters in Syria. But the president, though, did have a softer tone when it came to Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Just slightly delinquent. No, some are major delinquent. Some are way below 1%, and that's unacceptable. And then if something happens, we're supposed to protect them, and it's not really fair, and it never has been fair.
The president is threatening to alter foreign trade deals to bring delinquent NATO members to task.
And here with us now is Michael O'Hanlon, Senior Fellow and Director of Research for Foreign Policy at the Brookings Institution. Michael, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Nice to be with you. Thank you.
So today, Macron called NATO brain dead out of apparent frustration that Turkey only consulted with the U.S. on Syria and no other NATO member. President Trump, who is considered pulling out of NATO, responded by saying that nobody needs NATO more than France. Is the alliance here losing its significance?
No, but it's got a number of internal disagreements that are pretty serious, and it could create weaknesses or even vulnerabilities. What I worry about most is the kind of thing that at least we haven't seen this time. It's like 2 years ago when President Trump doubted and cast significant confusion about whether the United States would come to the defense of NATO allies in the event of war. And I worried about that because Vladimir Putin could have interpreted that as a green light to attack the Baltic states or Poland, for example. But when we have squabbles like this one, where Macron uses an insult, President Trump insults him back, President Trump talks about using tariffs to punish countries that don't do enough with burden sharing. I may or may not like all those tactics or the name calling, but I don't see a fundamental threat to the security of the alliance either. So for me, even though this meeting, like many involving President Trump, is a little bit out of the norm of diplomatic protocol, the way in which the stakes are being discussed is at least a little more reassuring. I don't see a likelihood that an adversary is going to misinterpret this as an opportunity to attack a member of NATO.
Michael, really an extraordinary moment witnessing the two leaders today as they traded jabs over ISIS fighters in Syria. Trump claiming victory over ISIS, Macron saying the work is still far from over. Can you weigh in here?
Well, President Macron is right on that. Now, we all have a lot to be grateful for and to be a little proud of, Democrats and Republicans in the United States, because the strategy against ISIS goes back to President Obama. France as well, because the French have been part of it, and they've been very good on counterterrorism for decades. They've been dealing with terrorism for decades, just as we have. So these are not really the two countries that should be disparaging each other. They actually should be sort of giving a shout out to each other, in my humble opinion. But, Macron and Trump have had a tough couple of weeks, and so this is just one more manifestation of it. Generally speaking, France, which has really borne the harshest attack of any Western country in the last few years with the November 2015 Bataclan tragedy, has nonetheless really developed a serious counterterrorism effort over the years, and I think is much better prepared than most European states, even though those tragedies occurred. It has a lot of people moving in and out of France from the broader Middle East region. It's a tough environment and tough situation for them. So I give them a nod of respect in regard to their counterterrorism policy.
Michael, in the 40 seconds we have left, Turkey says it will oppose NATO's defense plan for the Baltics and Poland unless the alliance recognizes the Kurdish YPG, America's allies in the fight against ISIS, as terrorists. Should Turkey still be a member of NATO?
Yes, it should, because we need a strong southeastern flank, and Turkey's absorbed a lot of problems from the Syrian war, including 4 million refugees. I don't like President Erdogan, but I do respect what Turkey's done. And on balance, by the way, Turkey's not going to impede us from defending Poland or the Baltic states. They're just going to impede us from announcing a formal new doctrine. We can still prepare the military requirements for that defense, even without Turkey's permission. So it's a rough patch in U.S.-Turkish relations. But again, we got to bear in mind what Turkey has accomplished, what pain they've borne in this fight, and try to work through this tough moment, not try to kick them out of NATO.
Michael Hanlon at the Brookings Institution, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Meanwhile, impeachment still looming large over President Trump. Tonight, the Intelligence Committee is voting to transfer the report to the Judiciary Committee.
House Democrats released the committee report today. It concludes President Trump abused his office by pressuring Ukraine to announce investigations that would have helped his re-election campaign.
CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson is on the Hill, where Judiciary begins its public hearings tomorrow. Abigail?
That's right, Jenna. And President Trump might be overseas right now at the NATO summit, but his impeachment issues at home are still top of mind.
I think it's a disgrace. I think the Democrats should be ashamed of themselves.
Trump slammed Democrats for scheduling more hearings while he's out of the country, maintaining Democrats have no case.
If you look at impeachment and the word impeachment, here there was nothing wrong, nothing done wrong. It was a perfect conversation with a very nice gentleman, the president of Ukraine. The conversation was perfect.
But House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff painted a different picture of the report on MSNBC's Rachel Maddow show.
This is a very important point, which is the evidence on Ukraine is overwhelming, but the evidence on obstruction of Congress is also overwhelming.
Claiming proof Trump abused his power.
This is a president who has sought foreign intervention in U.S. elections twice now, and even in the midst of our impeachment inquiry, is again out publicly saying not only should Ukraine do this, but China should also investigate my opponent.
Leading Trump to fire back.
He's a maniac.
What would you want to learn if he testified?
I think Adam Schiff is a deranged human being.
While the Democrat-controlled House will likely vote to impeach Trump, Republicans claim in their own report the evidence presented does not prove any of these Democrat allegations, adding no witness testified to evidence of bribery, extortion, or any high crime or misdemeanor. GOP senators are also sticking with him.
This whole Ukrainian exercise in the House, the way they're doing it and the substance of it, I'm not impressed. I'm hoping for the good of the country that it doesn't come to the Senate.
Now, during tomorrow's hearing, there will be 4 constitutional law experts detailing the specifics of what high crimes and misdemeanors are. And then members will eventually decide whether or not to draw up official articles of impeachment. Back to you, John and Jenna.
All right, Abigail Robertson on the Hill, thank you. Well, to 2020, Kamala Harris is out. The California senator announcing the end of her presidential run this afternoon. Once considered a frontrunner, her bid for the White House saw a promising start. Her decision now to bow out comes after months of slumping poll numbers and a campaign often overshadowed by rival candidates like Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg. Harris will stay on as California's junior senator at least through 2022.
And with that, we want to bring in our chief political analyst, David Brody. David, how does Senator Harris's departure change the race?
Elizabeth Warren has a smile on her face tonight. Joe Biden does as well. If you look at the polling, Kamala Harris's supporters, the second choice was either Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden. A little bit of Buttigieg as well in there. So that's the number we'll watch now as we move forward a little bit here.
And who do you see next coming out?
Well, you know,
your crystal ball.
Yeah, you know, look, I think a lot of them are just going to stay in, you know, because whether there's a lot of reasons for it, whether it be a cabinet post or visibility. So I don't think any of them are really going to get out anytime soon. I thought this was somewhat of a shock, but to a degree, not so much because her staffing was really a problem. Kamala Harris's staffing was a problem.
You know, out of the gate, David, she was so strong. She did show so much promise. What happened?
Couple things. Staffing, number one. The African-American vote that she was hoping for stayed with Biden. I think that was important. And also, Elizabeth Warren, look, a lot of her supporters saw what was on the debate stage and went to Elizabeth Warren and some to Buttigieg. And some over to Biden. So, you know, she just had some problems overall, and she couldn't capitalize on that viral moment in the first debate because she didn't have the campaign support behind it to get moving.
On to impeachment. The House Intel report came out today. Any surprises with its release?
None whatsoever. I mean, obviously, abuse of power, obstruction of justice, those will be the two articles of impeachment coming forward from the Judiciary Committee. Those were laid out in the report. I do want to, you know, I got out the pink highlighter here. Here it is. I have evidence. But look, I thought this was interesting. This is Adam Schiff writing in the House Intel report. He says, given the proximate threat of further presidential attempts to solicit foreign interference in our next election, we cannot wait to make a referral until we get the rest of the evidence, basically. In other words, that's why they are, quote, rushing it, because they think President Trump is such a threat that he'll do this again on another call with another foreign country. Of course, they took a nice Thanksgiving break if it was so important. Clearly, they had time to do that. Tomorrow, a big hearing in the judiciary. What are you expecting there? Well, theatrics. I mean, Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, the whole kit and caboodle on the Republican side will be out there doing a lot of procedural gimmicks, a lot of folks will call it. So get ready right at 9 a.m. when that hearing starts. Is it 9, 10? I don't know. Anyhow, the point is when it starts, look for a lot of theatrics at the beginning. But the bottom line is Gerald Nadler, can he control that hearing? Adam Schiff did a relatively good job of it, trying to take Republicans back down a peg. Nadler has a history of having a hard time doing that, so we'll wait and see. All right. David, thank you. Thanks, David.
Coming up, a presidential historian's unprecedented take on President Trump.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, you know, to lead, just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Well, welcome back. While the author of a new book on the Trump presidency is getting plenty of applause from conservatives, he's getting death threats from liberals. Presidential historian Doug Weed has written the book, Inside Trump's White House, the real story of his presidency.
Now, Weed says what you hear from the media is not what he experienced when he was given access. David Brody spoke with the author today about his talker of a book.
Well, it is a book that has generated a lot of conversation, including a presidential seal tweet of approval, if you will. And Doug Weed joins us now. Doug, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Good to see you again.
Thank you, David. Good to see you, too.
Hey, so much to talk about in the book, but what surprised you as you were doing this venture? What did you kind of go in with a certain expectation, and what surprised you coming out of it?
You know, I went in, having worked in the White House, I went in suspecting that a lot more was calculated than it appears. And after I came out, I'm convinced a whole lot more is calculated than I thought. As Sun Tzu once said many years ago, out of chaos comes opportunity. And there's a method to the madness. It was very fascinating.
When you say calculated, what do you mean? Because some critics will say calculated, and that's not a good thing. You suggest otherwise, though.
Well, like NATO is a good example because he's meeting with NATO, and he blew it up, and the media was going crazy. Oh, this is our oldest ally. This is terrible. These are our closest friends, and the Pentagon sent generals in to sit with him to lecture him. These are our friends, sir. And he debated them. Well, if they're our friends, why are they breaking their word? And why is our middle class paying for high-speed railways in Germany and airports in France while they're descending into poverty? But they're our friends, sir. So he blew NATO up. It was just chaos. He rebuilt it. They raised $100 billion. It's stronger than it's ever been. The head of NATO is absolutely thrilled, and that's an example of how Donald Trump operates.
Doug, you paint a picture, a more flattering picture of inside the Trump White House than a Bob Woodward did in his book. How do you square the two, or do they square at all? It seems like we've got two different kind of vantage points here.
You know, I had a list of stories, David. I went down the list. Did this happen? No. Did this happen? No. I went to the sources that were in the room, that were cited to be in the room. They said never happened. So, and I soon found out that the real stories are far more interesting than the fake stories. So why would a historian want to waste their time writing anonymous stories and stories that have no historical foundation? It's beyond me.
Doug, we live in a toxic world. Talk a little bit about what you have received on the end of having certain threats apparently against you, some family members. Can you clear that up, explain that a little bit because of this book?
Yeah. Yes, we've had multiple death threats. They started coming as soon as the book was announced. They named our children. They had a lot of detail about my life and our children's life to make it kind of scary. And then death threats from other IP addresses and other sources. And some people don't want the book published. A lot of people are making a lot of money the way things are right now. There are these big monopolies, as you know, and then they pass stimulus bills that exempt these big companies from the regulations that they get passed, and they're multinational, and they're linked to China. So they don't like this president. He's overthrowing the tables and breaking the dishes, and they like things the way they are. And he's restoring the economy and restoring free markets, so they don't like it.
Doug, you are a presidential historian. There's a recent poll out. Over 50%, 53% of Republicans believe that Donald Trump is a better president than Abraham Lincoln, is what they're saying. Where might Donald Trump potentially rank in history as we move forward? Of course, he could be an impeached president as well.
Yeah, you know, there's 120 plus criteria they use to rank presidents, but the big four are war and peace, the economy, which is the biggest, really, communications, intelligence. When you look at communications, he's transformational with the use of social media. We're never going to go back from that. Intelligence, he saw what the greatest economists in the world did not see, unanimously did not see. When it comes to war, he's the first president in 40 years not to have invaded someone. We always invade someone. And when it comes to the economy, he's just unrivaled. It's everything Hubert Humphrey and LBJ and all the social engineers ever wanted for the poorest of the poor. It's coming true under Donald Trump.
Doug Weed, congratulations. Good luck with the book, and it was great to catch up again, sir.
Thank you, David. Good to see you.
Thanks, Doug.
And thank you, David. When we come back, the threats to religious liberty. What's at stake at the Supreme Court? Next.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy.
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times bestselling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain, get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
For Christians, religious liberty is one of the benchmark issues of our time.
In fact, the battleground often plays out in the courtroom. And as Paul Strand reports, a frequent defender of religious liberty says he sees new reasons for hope.
As one who argues cases up here puts it, the heart of religious liberty is this: every human has a conscience, and government shouldn't be messing with it.
It's that inner voice that urges us to choose the good and reject evil.
Luke Goodrich has fought for this right before the U.S. Supreme Court and writes about the huge challenges to it in Free to Believe.
When the government comes in and forces us to violate our conscience, it's forcing us to go against our human nature and violating a fundamental human right.
But as America moves toward a post-Christian era, issues seen by believers in their conscience as wrong are now exalted. Therefore, any opposition to them is condemned as rank discrimination.
Now those long-standing Christian beliefs are actually viewed as a threat.
The biggest current battleground, homosexual and transgender rights.
The rapid advance of gay rights is certainly the most significant religious liberty threat today.
The government long ago said you can't discriminate based on someone's race or sex. If the Supreme Court rules sex includes sexual orientation or transgender status in upcoming cases, it could mean real trouble for those with biblical views on human sexuality. You could likely multiply by the thousands new problems of the kind suffered by baker Jack Phillips, who refused to make a cake celebrating gay marriage.
Thousands of religious organizations will face new lawsuits and new liability simply for acting on their long-standing beliefs about human sexuality.
At one point, supporters promised same-sex marriage wouldn't harm anyone. Well, depending on how the court rules, Goodrich points out how those same so-called peacemakers could go all out to get their opponents.
To brand traditional Christian beliefs about marriage as a form of bigotry and then use the power of the state to punish those religious beliefs and practices.
On the other hand, Frank Wright of D. James Kennedy Ministries maintains believers back only one man, one woman marriage because it's healthy for families.
The Bible says it because it's for our welfare. It's what enables families to flourish.
He's sad homosexuals and their allies view that approach as bigotry and hatred.
If they were to come to me and say, you know, why do you hate me? I would explain to them that I don't. You and I see this issue totally differently. I don't hate you. Why should I hate you? And why should you hate me because we disagree?
As for the transgender issue, the Obama administration mandated that doctors and hospitals provide surgery for men who wanted to be turned into women and women into men.
Even when it violated their religious beliefs and their medical judgment. And if they didn't do that, they would be deemed to be discriminating and would be subject to government penalties.
Abortion is another battleground where supporters try to demonize those who can't and won't back it.
If you as a Christian, whether you're a doctor or an employer, if you oppose abortion, you're somehow denying health care to women and discriminating against women.
Goodrich fought for both the Little Sisters of the Poor and Hobby Lobby's pro-life stand before the Supreme Court.
The government was trying to force them to provide abortion-causing drugs in their health insurance plans or in their businesses, even when their conscience told them, you cannot participate in an abortion.
The court ruled in favor of both, and Goodrich says believers can take hope in how often their conscience rights win like that in court.
We have a 90% win rate, and we're undefeated at the U.S. Supreme Court.
He warns, however, Christians need to prepare for defeats and learn how to show Christ's love even to a culture that's turning more and more against them.
Much of Scripture is written to Christians who are facing suffering and persecution for their faith. And as Christians, we need to recall those teachings and let those influence us. And it's not just about winning or fighting a culture war. It's actually more about being like Christ in the midst of these conflicts.
What Goodrich hopes for is a government that just leaves religion alone as much as possible. For instance, in public schools, it shouldn't force students to pray, but it can allow a time where they can pray if they want. It shouldn't build a cross on government property, but it can let one stand. In other words, government shouldn't oppose or promote religion. It should just let it be. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from the Supreme Court.
Thank you, Paul. Well, still ahead on Faith Nation. Spacewalks, the challenges and payoffs of stepping into the void.
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
Finally tonight, the mystery of dark matter and the origins of our universe could be solved by a little elbow grease.
Jenna, you know what else also helps?
What's that?
Billions of dollars in specialized equipment, like in this case. Yesterday, crew aboard the International Space Station completed another spacewalk. Astronauts Luca Parmitano and Andrew Morgan successfully installed a new cooling system for a cosmic particle detector. That's a piece of high-tech equipment never designed to be fixed in space. But this third in a series of 4 spacewalks is working to do just that. Following the final, yet-to-be-determined spacewalk, scientists will be able to better understand where we came from. Jenna, did you ever want to be an astronaut?
I can't say that I did, but I know that you went to space camp.
I did. I was a young astronaut once.
So you did?
I did. Quickly got it out of my system. Thanks
That's
for
going
watching.
to do it for Faith Nation.
Have a good night.